So much better. You know, it's so much easier when machinery actually does what it's supposed to do. Welcome to News Talk Tonight. You're listening to Dave Moore and Brian Lee. We're on the horn, onthehorn.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, a whole bunch of different stuff. And we're brought to you by Amazon.com, Gateway Financial Partners, Sandus Travel, Shipper Technologies, Budwitz and Meyer Jack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. Yes, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about new judges, repairs to highways, bridges, train tracks, keeping politics looking clean, dueling deficits, gun control, and Mayor DeStefano is out. Yikes. Yeah, all right. You saw how the mayor announced today that he is
I did.
not going to run for re-election.
I did. I was disappointed.
I wasn't disappointed, but I was surprised.
I was sure. When I read the link, the stuff that you'd sent me to prep for the show, I actually said it out loud to Parker. I was like, I can't believe this. And he's like, what? I'm like, DeStefano's not going to run again. I was completely taken aback.
It was...
He's the guy.
he has... why don't we jump into that little piece right there? The mayor of New Haven, who has been mayor of New Haven for 20 years. He is the longest-serving mayor in the city of New Haven.
Turn on Skype.
Ever. Turn on Skype.
Yeah. Parker wants to call it.
Okay. Longest-serving mayor in New Haven ever. And... oh, this is going to be interesting. Brian, I'm sorry, we may not be able to take your call because, there we go. You know, it's always helpful to know these things before. Just saying.
If you need passwords or any of that stuff, I have it here.
Yes.
Okay, I'll bring it right over.
Thank you. Anyways, the mayor has been serving 10 two-year terms in a row. And there we go. Let's see. And we're apparently going to be joining. It's buffering. I love that ad. I love that ad. Oh my God. You know, it's the sort of thing that makes you appreciate the fact that you have Comcast, not AT&T. Okay. Skype apparently is up and running. So feel free to give us a call. Use the public Skype number, Brian. That would be 860-266-4676, in case you didn't remember. So the mayor, his term is up in January. If he was going to run again, he would have to have basically announced now.
Now, yeah.
Because the municipal elections are this November.
Right.
And basically, the mayor has been considered a fixture of New Haven politics and to a certain degree Connecticut politics.
Yep.
As some of you may recall, Mayor DeStefano ran for governor in 2006. It was, as you can imagine, an unsuccessful venture given the fact that he's still the mayor of New Haven. But
he could have done both jobs. That's how good that guy is.
What is also interesting is the fact that Mayor DeStefano has actually become fairly well known in anti-gun circles, gun control circles. He's been very active and very loud about his opposition to all sorts of guns, being the mayor of one of the top 5 cities population-wise for Connecticut. It's not a great shock or surprise.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the mayor was in Hartford yesterday, and he was testifying to the first public hearing about gun control, and he was his usual self, not letting on to anything about what he was doing. Pretty much as soon as he left, he started contacting friends that he was now going to announce a big announcement. What's interesting is there is a restaurant in New Haven that bears the same name as a restaurant here in Hartford, the Russian Lady.
Yep.
And the announcement was this afternoon at about 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock that he was not going to run again at the Russian Lady in New Haven. I'm wondering if it's owned by the same folks.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, Jerry owns it.
Well, thank God, because God only knows branding. Ooh.
No, he owns most of Hartford at this point.
Yeah.
Come down to Sally's sometime. I'll show you everything that Jerry owns. He owns most of it.
Mayor DeStefano has not indicated what he will do after his term is up. It has been noted that he has sold an investment property in New Haven over the last several years and bought a second home in Florida. One could only guess where he'll be in January of 2014. My guess is Florida.
That's probably a good bet.
Yeah. With the announcement, a number of challengers are now stepping into the limelight after years of suppressed political ambitions. State Representative Gary Holder Winfield and Alderman Justin Elliker have set their sights on the mayor's office. Alderman Elliker announced this last week. Apparently, State Representative Gary Holder Winfield will be announcing at the end of this week.
Okay.
So it should be interesting to see what happens thereafter. Brian, I did put the Skype up, so I'm just saying you haven't called in yet, as far as I can tell. As mentioned before, the mayor was speaking at the first public hearing for gun control in Hartford yesterday. The fascinating thing about that was that there were thousands of people who were lined up to actually speak.
Yep. Couple thousand, right?
More than 2,000 people signed up to speak at the first public all-day hearing on gun regulations. The representatives and senators, it was a joint meeting for both House and Senate, heard first. Here we go. Brian is calling in. Hold on. Yeah, let's see. You there, Brian?
Yo.
Hey, how about that? The technologically declined come through once again.
I know. This is great. So I always listen to the show as I'm driving home with the Ustream app on my phone via the Bluetooth stuff in the car.
Awesome.
And so that's great. I had to text Brian Lee because I wasn't sure if you had your phone near you while you're doing your own producer stuff. And you guys are running. I was actually in the parking lot finishing my lunch. Subway sandwich.
Okay, break out the violence. Aww. So, you were equally surprised by Mayor DeStefano's announcement today?
Yeah, I was very surprised, and I'm sad. He's he's like a little gem. He's like, you point to that, you point to DeStefano, and you say, well, we don't have all corrupt mayors in Connecticut, which has really kind of been what people expect from Connecticut now with the Giordano's and what's the other guy's name? Ganem or whatever down in Bridgeport.
Ganem and then Perez in Hartford. I mean, okay, those
Perez
were
yeah.
3 of the 5 major cities in Connecticut. New Haven was remarkably not one of them.
Yeah, and I love New Haven. I really do. It's the best. It is the best destination in Connecticut as far as a large city goes. Number 2, I don't know, maybe Danbury. What's after that? I mean, Hartford is Hartford's fun, but it's like you go to Hartford for a specific thing, and then you get out.
Yep.
You go down to Black-Eyed Sally's for food and dancing, and you get out. There's no one really strolls around Hartford like they stroll around New Haven, you know? There's no real sense of community. It's more of you go to your events in Hartford. That's it.
One of the advantages that New Haven has over any of the other cities is that it has a major university smack dab in the middle.
Center, yep.
And there is both the university atmosphere as well as, you know, the stuff that supports universities, like stores, like bars, like and you have, as you were saying, a true sense of community as a result. Hartford lost its sense of community pretty much as soon as the major interstates went through. You had destruction of two major neighborhoods, and you essentially cut the city off from its original reason for being, the river.
Yep.
And as a result, there was nothing that Hartford could do once those highways came through to help reinvigorate itself. The only thing that it had after that was the capital.
Yep.
Interestingly enough.
No, I agree. The best thing for Hartford is to get 84 out of there.
Oh, now you mean as a complete route or as a big bridge going through the town? Because
reroute it. I mean, yeah, spend $20 billion and reroute this sucker.
Because what they're talking about, among other things, is taking down the big bridge and having it be at ground level, which still does not make sense to me. It makes almost as much sense as the busway does. And the reason why they were talking about bringing it down to ground level was that they would have it run essentially alongside the busway for at least a portion of the city. But it's still a highway. You're not going to cross it. It just, so I understand what you're saying as far as relocating the highway. The problem, though, is it becomes prohibitively expensive. And we don't have the money for that.
You know what? I say build a different highway. Leave it there. Build a different highway.
Well, okay.
And then what we call 84 now,
yeah.
I want it renamed. I want it officially renamed the G-Fox Extension.
For those of you who may not know Hartford as well as some of us do, G-Fox used to be the big department store in the center of Hartford. And as a matter of fact, for years, they had, big Christmas dues from pretty much Thanksgiving up through, Epiphany Day, which is January 6th. It was a big draw for Hartford. We don't have that anymore. We have the XL Center.
I mean, the whole reason that we have 84 there is because those losers that own G-Fox wanted to make the G-Fox building visible from the highway. We were like, oh, all right, great. That's a great idea.
And 91, frankly, was truly the death knell for the city because it took out a large swath of community areas that were vibrant community areas for the city. And as I said, it cut the city off from the river. And nothing that they have done since, with the riverfront recapture, with building additional bridges like pedestrian bridges, it doesn't work because it's a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lane highway that people don't understand, that understandably they don't want to cross. So New Haven has never had that problem, even though they have 95 and 91 going through it. And another little interesting factoid, there was a point in time when the New Haven colony was considered the capital of Connecticut.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? To a certain extent, it probably still is. I mean, with Yale University there and all the real great arts happening, with the exception of Real Artways, which is kind of fun.
Yep.
There's not much else. I mean, you can go to the Bushdome, you can get these kind of overblown travel company shows, and that's fine. But if you really want to go see, good artistic expression, you go to New Haven. It's just sort of the rule, and it's too bad.
You have a major theater down in New Haven, a stage theater, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
You have also the Yale Repertoire. You have, as Brian was saying, a number of different things that can happen all at once that don't overshadow each other. Whereas in Hartford, it's kind of like you got to have one thing and one thing only going any particular week, or else it gets lost.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, what Cigar should do? Cigar now? I forget.
Yes.
Mayor Cigar should do is look at New Haven, look at Seattle, look at all these different. Look at Cambridge, up in Massachusetts. What do they all have? They have great bookstores. They have art dealers. They have places you can go in and just sit for a little bit, have a cup of coffee, and go. Who cares about tax revenue? Give them all tax-free. Doesn't matter. I'm not making my money on that. What I'm making my money on is on people getting into Hartford and experiencing it, people spending their money and paying like a little bit of sales tax or something, but don't worry about taxing the businesses there. That's what kills everything. You get into a place, it's hysterical to me. And you can rent, 5,000 square feet of office space in the Gold Building in Hartford cheaper than you could going to West Hartford or East Hartford. East Hartford is more expensive than downtown Hartford. And it's just mind-boggling to me. And you should be, in order to get that kind of vibrancy back to where you can get $40, $50, $60 a square foot in downtown Hartford, you got to slowly rebuild it and bring back the community. And it seems like every time they try to do something, they grab a big deal and then they try to pound the ever-living tax heck out of it, and then the people leave. I loved that idea that they had for the grocery store. What did the city do to help it? Nothing.
And they were done in 6 months.
Grand opening, that's great, and now you're closed like a year and a half later.
Yep. Now, one of the main differences between, say, Hartford and New Haven is that we have not had a strong mayor position in Hartford until recently. Whereas in New Haven, they've always had a strong mayor position. And that's one of the reasons why the DeStefano departure is going to be such a political black hole, because for 20 years, Mayor DeStefano has basically run the third largest city in the state of Connecticut. And nobody knows what's going to be happening next. And Hartford doesn't yet have the equation put together to figure out how it can succeed. It doesn't have a sense of identity, and it doesn't have a sense of continuity that New Haven has had for years. And it will be very interesting to see what happens to New Haven in the next 2 years, because it's as I said, it's the third largest city population-wise. Are they going to be a rudderless ship, or are they going to be able to continue the level of success that they've had for the last 20 years? And that's a great unknown. And it creates a pretty... Go ahead.
Did you say Gary Holder was going to run?
Yes. Gary Holder Winfield.
That's interesting.
He's announcing it at the end of this week.
I can't remember if he's a rep or he's a senator.
He's a rep.
He's a rep?
Yep. And
I think that's interesting that a rep would go. That really tells you about our General Assembly.
Well, for heaven's sakes, our legislature's part-time, Brian. Mayor is a full-time gig. It's
true.
You're going to make more money as a mayor, legitimately, with your salary than you will as a state rep. And it's also mayor of the third largest city in the state of Connecticut. I mean, that's a lot of political power right there.
Yep.
So
and the cultural hub.
Yep, it's not a surprise that a state rep would want to seemingly take a step down when in reality it's a pretty big step up.
Yeah. You got to look around New Haven and look at the gems down there. What restaurants have been there forever. Make sure they stay in business. Find out what they need to stay in business. You got Pepe's down there. You got that other place that no one really likes. But you got Atticus Bookstore. A landmark for sure.
Hot tomatoes.
You got all these little pockets of gems down there. Hartford. What do you have in Hartford? You got great restaurants in Hartford, bar none.
Yep.
Like, Hartford restaurants will compete against any restaurant on the planet. And I'm very proud of Hartford for that. But then what? You go to the Bushnell, you pray, your route that the understudy or the traveling cast doesn't screw up their lines. You're sitting there nervous that they're going to have a bad performance, as opposed to going down to actually see the show on Broadway. You can just sit back and get entertained. You go to Theater Works and see some kind of messed up show that's poorly written and horrendously acted. Hartford stage just sort of overblown. You don't got a lot.
The Schubert.
Not much happening down there.
The Schubert in New Haven is considered to be pretty much the next stop to Broadway. I mean, it's off Broadway, yes.
I think the Schubert's fine. Schubert is certainly smaller than the Bushnell.
Yes.
So you can do a much better job with big shows in there. I'm not sure you could probably do something like Rent at the Schubert, but you probably couldn't do Wicked, or you probably couldn't do Shrek at the Schubert. I don't think there's not enough space. And look, the Bushnell is a fantastic facility. This is not me saying anything bad about the Bushnell. I love the Bushnell. They do such a great job. But at some point, the Bushnell has to turn it over to the director, and the director turns it over to the performers. The performers got to get out there and do it. And sometimes you get a great show. Sometimes you're sitting there saying, I hope no one else saw this. I hope no one important is in the audience right now.
Part of the problem that both New Haven and Hartford have is they're in Connecticut. Connecticut we've always had an Avis mentality. And, we're stuck between Boston and New York, two really happening cities on a very busy East Coast.
Like that too. Springfield is just like that. Springfield and Hartford should really just say, look, we are sister cities, and that's the end of it. Enough of this trying to beat each other up. We got to combine resources here,
That would be an interesting point. The only problem is that Springfield's in a different state. It would be easier to sell the idea of a regional authority if the regional authority was in one state. And
I think this is one of those Democrat Republican things between you and me. I don't want it. I just want a business owner to say, the guy at the Bushnell to say, look, why doesn't I don't know what the theater is up in Springfield, but you and me, we all get the same shows and all that kind of stuff. What are you doing for marketing? What am I doing for marketing? Let's team up. Let's have a strategic alliance. I'm not saying we share revenue and all that kind of stuff, but let's team up and really bring business out of Boston, bring business out of New York, and pump up our cities, for crying out loud. We're good cities.
Well, you've got, in a sense, the 91 corridor, Springfield, Hartford, New Haven. Why can't you do something with that?
Great, let's do it. What do you want to do? You and me.
The problem is our chat room is saying Springfield's gone way downhill in the last few years. Hartford doesn't need them dragging it down.
Ouch.
Yeah, I actually haven't been to Springfield in a while. I used to be there constantly when I was up at MAS, but I haven't been there in a few years at least.
Yeah, I went to a Springfield hockey game back in November, and it was before the strip club exploded, and I was there shortly after the strip club exploded, and there were some who were arguing that there was an improvement. I mean, it's one thing to, engage in urban renewal by destroying an entire block, but it's been hard. It's been a lot harder for Springfield to maintain than it has been for Hartford, in part because we still do have the capital in Hartford. I mean, that is part of the draw. But I agree with you, Brian, that there is a lot more that could or should be done to reinstill a sense of community and reinstill a desire to actually be there. And who knows? Maybe with Mayor DeStefano stepping down, Hartford might have a chance to shine now.
The rising star again.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hartford's rising star. We're stuck, but we'll try to get better. Great slogan. I got to run, guys. Thanks so much
All right.
for the talk.
Take it easy, Brian. Thanks for joining. Well, the Avis mentality. It's there. It's been with Connecticut pretty much ever since Abraham Ripikoff was our senator. And we're talking the mid-'60s. Mm-hmm. Okay? The one thing that Hartford had going for it back then was we were still then the insurance capital of the world.
Oh, yeah.
The world. Okay? Not anymore. And it's, we haven't adapted to the times.
We were number 6 on the most drunk city list in the country.
And one would wonder why. And part of the reason is that, we still don't have our heads out of our nether regions with regards to money. We don't know as a state, and we have a hard time as the city of operating things without running into a deficit. And that has also, when was the last time that you heard that the city of New Haven had a deficit? Yes, exactly.
The 80s, probably the 80s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's been a really long
I was trying
time.
to remember the guy's name, but I might even be wrong on that.
It was before DeStefano.
Yeah.
Yep.
DeLito.
Yes.
Yeah, Ben
Mayor
DeLito. Yeah.
Very good. Whoa.
Oh, dude, I pulled that out of my
Nice. Yeah, well, to add insult to injury, as far as our ability to manage money, apparently the State Bond Commission has approved $575.5 million in bonding. And it's expected that we are going to run up the tab to $1.8 billion.
That's a B.
That's a big B. And now, for those of you who say, well, all right, bonding is important. It allows us to fund certain things that ordinarily would not be able to take place, like, for instance, the repairs of highways. That's important. But one of the things that was bonded, it was the largest big ticket item, was the Metro North Railroad Bridge and Parking Facility. Where, might you ask, is the Metro North Railroad Bridge and Parking Facility?
The one in New Haven?
Stanford.
Oh.
Gee, I wonder why they got that money.
Oh, okay.
And, we're going to be spending $57 million on resurfacing 200 miles of highways in the highways and byways of Connecticut, $280 million in school construction projects. Nobody's going to argue that you shouldn't build or improve upon schools. Nobody's going to argue that you shouldn't resurface roads. They need that.
Right.
But a railroad bridge and parking facility. Now, Stanford has been behind as far as its reconstruction of its railroad area.
Right.
I will grant you that.
Right. So I was going to say that's a terrible stop. So
But couldn't we be asking the feds for a little more money, like particularly the Department of Transportation? Can't get it from Amtrak, and Metro North is barely keeping its head above water financially.
Yep.
So it should be coming from the feds. It's not happening. So we're having to fund it ourselves. The one thing that people are worried about as far as all this bonding money is concerned, it's using the state's credit card. Zik, zik. And as some of you may recall, last year, Moody's investors downgraded our credit rating, which meant that we would be paying more on money that we were borrowing. Interest. Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why our deficit wasn't as bad last year as it could have been was that we ended up, before the downgrade, paying less in interest. Now we're going to pay more.
Boo.
Now, another aspect of impacting the budget, and this is something that is near and dear to my own heart. The governor just announced this last week that he is nominating a Superior Court judge up to the appellate court. That is to fill a vacancy that we assume is going to occur when appellate court judge Carmen Espinoza is formally confirmed as the next Connecticut State Supreme Court justice. That means that there would be roughly 30 vacancies on the Superior Court level because Judge Keller, who he is appointing to fill the appellate court position, is a Superior Court judge. Now, for those of you who have listened to me before, you know that a Superior Court judge costs the state of Connecticut roughly $250,000 a year. Okay, that's not big money when you compare to, $1 billion deficit. Fine. But when you nominate 15 judges all at once,
Wow.
now you're talking about some real money. And the governor made it very clear that what he was attempting to do was to fill positions that had already been budgeted for, so that he wasn't adding, if you will, to the deficit. However, there were a couple of notable nominations that sprang right to mind right as soon as I saw the names. One of them...
I imagine it was the same one that I actually said. Again, it was, what? Really?
There were two that came to my mind, and it was only because I've been following a federal criminal case in Hartford.
Okay.
The federal criminal case, for those of you who don't know, it concerns a gifting table scheme, which both former Connecticut Attorney General, now Senator Richard Blumenthal, and current Attorney General George Jepsen have said is a glorified Ponzi scheme. Mm-hmm. And the reason why these gifting tables were supposed to work is that the folks at the bottom would give the folks at the top gifts. $5,000. Okay? It's below the $12,000 maximum that you would have to pay taxes on. Hence, the gifting table.
Right.
Well, the folks at the top would be making $40,000 from these individual gifts from the 8 people below them. Okay? And then they would move on to the next level, if you will.
I love that.
And for some reason, the ladies in charge thought that this was perfectly legal, that they were not avoiding tax payments, etc. That in fact, this was a great way to make money. The IRS disagreed with them. Not only did the IRS disagree with them, but also the federal prosecutors. And
pyramid scheme, people.
One of the things that the gift ladies liked to tout was that their whole idea had been vetted by accountants and lawyers. In fact, there was one particular lawyer from Branford, Connecticut, who had allegedly reviewed the guidelines and had actually modified the guidelines to bring it more into compliance with the law. That's how they were presenting it. Well, that lawyer happens to be Shelley Marcus. Now, Shelley Marcus happens to be the daughter of attorney Edmund Marcus. Edmund Marcus, for those of you who might know a little something about politics in Connecticut, used to be the Connecticut state chair for the Democratic Party. Another little interesting twist is that both attorneys Marcus, were representing members of the gift club in front of state regulators. And in fact, attorney Edmund Marcus had worked out a deal in which $215,000 was returned to the state of Connecticut as part of a "you won't prosecute my people, it's all good" deal.
That would be another gifting table.
Yes. Only this one's slightly more legal. Well, attorney Shelley Marcus is one of the 15 people who's been nominated to be a Superior Court judge. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm involved even peripherally on something like this, I'm not sure I want to have my name bandied about as being a judge. Maybe after the trial was over and done with and a jury had made a determination as to whether or not there were violations of the law or not.
Yeah.
You know, but what's even more interesting is that both attorneys Marcus are under subpoena by both the government and the defense. So they have no comment at this time as to the ongoing trial. Now, I know for a fact that when you are asking the Judicial Selection Commission to consider you for approval, and I also know once you've been put on the approved list, when you are about to be nominated again, you are asked the same question. And that question is there anything in your past that might cause embarrassment to the governor if you were nominated? And I can't imagine how attorney Shelley Marcus thought that the answer to that question would be no.
No, nothing.
Now, the other name that made everybody go, "What?" was a former senator from the Litchfield Hills.
That was the one for me. That was the one where I'm looking, I'm like, oh, okay. Really? Okay.
What's even more interesting is not only is he Republican, not only was he a fairly vociferous political opponent of the governor's, both in the Senate as well. He also sat on the bonding commission.
Oh, yeah.
That's another reason why I threw that little story in there.
Yeah.
And he was the opponent to Elizabeth Esty in the 5th Congressional District. And there were a lot of people who were basically saying, you know what? He's going to have a much stronger campaign if he was to run again in 2 years.
Yep.
No, it's not going to happen. You know why? Because former Senator Andrew Rohrabaugh is instead nominated to be a Superior Court judge. And what's even more interesting, ladies and gentlemen, how long was he on the approved list? Now, I can tell you from personal experience, it takes a while to actually get through the process. You fill out a 35-page application. You have to provide financial affidavits. You're subjected to a background check. Now, I can imagine that Senator Rohrabaugh would not have been subjected to as great a background check, given the fact that he'd already run for Congress.
We probably had to have that same background check just to do that anyway, I would imagine.
Maybe. They've actually, the national parties have nominated ex-felons to run for Congress before. So I just now, not in Connecticut, Georgia, to name one state. But nonetheless, Senator Rohrabaugh was on the approved list for 1 week. 1 week. I know of people who have been on the approved list for 17 years. And they have to be saying to themselves, I got approved. What did I do wrong? Obviously, they didn't run against Elizabeth Esty.
Yeah, right.
But 15. Wow. I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars here. Now, I will grant you, having been a part of the court system, I am a state arbitrator and fact finder in the Judicial District of Hartford.
Okay.
I have also done stuff down in Middletown. I can tell you, Hartford has 5 vacancies. They could use another judge or 2.
Mm-hmm.
Middletown has 2 vacancies. They could use another judge.
Wow.
There's plenty, and we're talking about the judicial districts that are like the busiest in the state.
Biggest.
Okay. Stanford lacking about 5. They really could use some. Bridgeport's lacking about 3. They could use some. So, and I'm sure that New Haven is down. They're down at least 2 because there were 2 recent retirements. So they're probably down 5 as well.
Wow.
Okay, so it's not like there isn't a need, but when you're dealing with a budget situation like we've been dealing with for the last 2 years, is it really smart to be filling those positions? I don't know, but I sure as heck wouldn't want to be filling that position with someone who's been subject to a federal investigation.
Yeah, that might be a mistake.
You know, I'm just saying.
Might be a mistake.
Just saying. Well, that also brings us to, we're talking about really the appearances of propriety. One senator has actually taken that to heart, and that would be Senator Ed Meyer. He's a Democrat from Guilford. He wants to help make sure that public campaign financing doesn't look bad. And the reason why is because one of his former fellow senators has helped make it look really, really bad. I'm referring to former Senator Newton. Now, Ernie Newton was a longtime senator from Bridgeport. Ernie had a good gig going. He basically was an unstoppable political force in Bridgeport. Until the feds came knocking on his door. And he was convicted of corruption, of accepting a $5,000 bribe, of a couple of campaign finance violations, and, evading taxes. All right, when I said that there were a couple of campaign funding violations, the real term was plundering campaign contributions to pay for car repairs, personal cell phone bills, and other personal expenses. That's a definitive no-no. You don't do that.
I needed some shampoo, so I'm just going to take some of the money from this pot.
Yeah,
and do that.
No. And he was forcing a trial until they started picking a jury, and then he realized, I got to get out of this. So he pled guilty. He's a convicted felon, and he served 4 years in federal penitentiary. By the way, that's 3 years longer than our ex-felon governor. Or I should say our felonious ex-governor. He only spent about 1.25 years.
It just makes me laugh every time you say that.
Yeah. Okay, so why does Senator Meyer get all bent out of shape about Ernie Newton? Because Ernie ran for re-election this last election, and in fact had applied for public campaign financing. And what happened to former Senator Newton earlier this month? He got arrested again. For what charges? Corruption. Again. Certain campaign finance problems. Well, the result has been that Senator Meyer is trying to, or is proposing a bill that would prevent those who are convicted of corruption, political corruption, from being able to participate in the public campaign finance program. Now, one of the things that, you look at that and you say, yeah, that makes sense. We don't want to have someone who's had their hand stuck in the till before to have their hand stuck in the till again, only this time it's with our money. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, apparently it's getting scant support amongst his fellow senators. The person who objects the most is the Senate Minority Leader, John McKinney. We should note that Senator McKinney doesn't really believe in public finance campaign stuff.
At all.
At all.
Okay.
Does not believe that when there are thousands of people who are out of work, that we should be spending millions of dollars on public campaign financing. Getting that out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Said Senator McKinney, he believes that the measure might be possibly unconstitutional because it deprives one class of people, folks convicted of political corruption, of access to grants to otherwise qualified candidates. The unfortunate thing is we need to remind Senator McKinney of one salient fact. We do that in other areas of our lives as well.
Yeah.
For instance, if you're a convicted felon,
you can't vote.
Right. Now, a lot of folks think that the vote is like a very important constitutional right.
Mm-hmm.
And generally speaking, it is.
Yes.
And yet we have seen fit to take away that right for folks who have transgressed our laws to such an extent that they are now considered felons. Yeah. Now, certain felons are able to petition the government for the right to vote again, and they have to go through a process. It's a lot like going through Board of Pardons, and in fact, in this state, it may well be the Board of Pardons that deals with that particular issue.
How long would something like that take?
It could take anywhere from 9 months to a year, sometimes as long as a year and a half, depending on how much background checks need to be done, etc. And it's not you file it, it gets rubber stamp approved. There are plenty of folks who have applied for that and can't. I do believe that our felonious ex-governor has had his right to vote reinstated.
Okay.
Yeah. It would make it even more humorous if, in fact, he was talking about politics and he couldn't vote. But the critique against Senator Meyer's proposal that it could be unconstitutional, frankly, with due respect to Senator McKinney, doesn't hold a whole lot of water. And I'm thinking, you go, Ed. You get that bill passed. The other problem, though, is that when asked for comment by the press, the office of the President pro tempore of the Senate, Donald Williams, did not comment. That is usually not a good sign.
Yeah, right.
And our last little bit of news, because we have so much fun talking about finances, it appears as though there is a dueling deficit projection ongoing at this point in time. There is an organization known as the Office of Fiscal Analysis. It is run by the legislature, and it is nonpartisan. That means there are no political axes to grind. They are projecting our deficit to be $138.6 million by the time June 30 rolls around. Now, the Office of Policy and Management, which is the governor's, it's the executive branch's version of the same thing, only it is partisan because it's
Right. It's
gubernatorial appointees.
Right.
Ben Barnes is the secretary of OPM. They're predicting that it's a $64 million deficit.
So almost exactly half.
Yeah.
Come on, that's ridiculous.
Now,
It's almost I'm looking at the numbers here. I'm like that's like dead on half. Did
Pardon?
somebody not get the second page of the numbers? It's ridiculous.
the real issue is not so much Medicaid, although Medicaid has whacked us since December to the tune of $118 million.
Yikes.
That was, quote, not expected. When I say not expected, it wasn't projected. The
Okay.
projections were always lower because they were not expecting as large a number of people actually filing applications and looking for that assistance. Gee, when you have an unemployment rate of 9%, you're going to be surprised that you have more people applying for medical assistance? Really? The other problem is the over exuberant optimism on the revenue side. Apparently, lost revenues. It's not really lost revenues. It's revenues that were projected to be higher are actually going to be lower to the
Okay.
tune of $160 million. Ouch. Okay. And this was the general consensus is that lost revenues will climb up to $160 million. And after the deficit mitigation was approved, Kevin Lembo predicted that the state would still be $40 million in the red, mostly due to continued state spending, which has led to a hiring freeze. The state now formally has a hiring freeze. Nothing but critical positions will now be filled.
Defined as
Commissioner or deputy commissioner.
okay.
Okay. Pretty much anything below that, and nope, not happening.
Okay.
Except we have 15 new Superior Court
Right, except
judges.
for all those justices.
I don't know. Just really? Well, we've been having so much fun that we even forgot to take a commercial break. So we've been sponsored by Deepwater Seafood of Avon. They're really great. You really want to go visit them. You're going to want to call ahead and get an order in. And if I could find the dang card, it's 860-676. Come on. Where did you go? There we go. 860-676-9657. Deepwater Seafood of Avon, not just for the halibut, and CentralCTDental.com. Make your appointments online. CentralCTDental.com. Well, you've been listening to News Talk Tonight. I'm Dave Moore. I've been joined by Brian Lee. Thank you very much for co-hosting. Looks like you might have this gig for a lot longer than you expected.
That's perfectly fine. You got to pick for Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Ravens.
I do too. Since it is newsworthy, did you hear of any the stuff about Ray Lewis today with the performance-enhancing drugs?
No.
There's SI is saying yes, he is saying no. Also, the Biogenesis lab down in Miami, they found some paperwork with the names Rodriguez, Alex, Cabrera, Melky, and Gio Gonzalez.
Oh,
Which I was shocked by that.
really?
Yeah, I was shocked by that one. Because he had a great year last year. He won 19 or 20, whatever it was for the Nats. But that one
Ouch.
took me by surprise.
Yeah.
So
And this all on the backside of Lance Armstrong, and nobody has any patience for this anymore.
This is one of the labs in I guess in the Miami area, and they've just found some paperwork out there. And,
oh no!
Yep. Yeah, you can find that on ESPN's. There's a couple of different sources on that one, so give that a read. As a baseball fan, I know you'll love that.
Yeah, and next week I'm going to see if I can pick up the book.
Oh yeah.
But next week we may talk a little bit about the fun and games of being a manager in a big city on the Northeast.
If you tell me that we're going to talk about that, I will buy it tomorrow and read it next week. I'll read it soup to nuts, and I'm working like the next 10 days in a row.
You're insane.
And I will still read the entire book because they said 360 pages, and I'm incredibly interested.
Well,
even though it's not my team, I'm still interested.
Your team is going to be involved at least on the periphery.
Of course, because they have to be.
We're talking about a book that was written by Dan Shaughnessy and who?
Tito.
And we're not talking Martinez either.
No.
The guy who brought 2 World Series championships to a team that hadn't seen one for 86 years.
I guess he brought him fried chicken and beer too, but
no, he didn't, and that was one of the reasons why he's gone. Damn prima donnas. Anyways, we're gonna read about Terry Francona's fun and games in Boston, and we might actually talk a little bit about it next week, particularly if it's a slow news week. But as I was saying before, you've been listening to News Talk Tonight on onthehorn.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We're brought to you by Amazon.com, Gateway Financial Partners, Sandits Travel, Shipper Technologies, Budwitz and Meyerjack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. We'll be back next week. See you then.
Guantanamo Bay. They keep me here and they don't say when I could leave or how long I stay. Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay.